Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about what just happened in Islamabad. The much anticipated talks aimed at easing tensions between the US and Iran have, at least for now, failed. And if you have been following the build up, this outcome might seem both surprising and not surprising at the same time. In the days leading up to the talks, the messaging coming from Washington was anything but consistent. At one point, there were extremely strong warnings, language that suggested the possibility of massive escalation. Then, almost suddenly, there was a talk of a ceasefire, followed by signals that seemed to undercut the very idea. So by the time both sides arrived in Islamabad, there was already a gap, not just in positions but in expectations. And that gap matters because negotiations like these depend heavily on clarity: what is being offered, what is non negotiable, and more importantly, what is the end goal. In this case, these questions did not seem to have clear shared answers. Reports suggest that both sides were effectively working from different frameworks. The US position included a broader set of demands, touching on issues like Iran's regional activities and military capabilities. Iran, on the other side, came with its own set of priorities focused on sanctions reliefs, sovereignty, and regional dynamics, including ongoing conflicts involving its allies. So instead of meeting in the middle, the talks appear to circle around two different starting points, and then the issue of trust or a lack of it. When rhetoric shifts rapidly from threats to diplomacy and back again, it can make it difficult for other side to take commitments at face value. That seems to have played a role here. From Iran's perspective, there were also conditions tied to development outside the room, particularly what's happening in Lebanon and the broader region. For example, the situation involving Israel and Hezbollah continued to be a major sticking point. Iran has just signaled that broader de escalation is connected, that progress in one area depends on restraint in another. But that linkage complicates negotiations because it means that even if the progress is made at the table in Islamabad, events elsewhere can derail it, and almost instantly. And this is essentially what we are seeing. The talks didn't just fail because of one disagreement, they stalled because multiple layers of conflicts are now interconnected. There are also structural issues here. Before you can have meaningful negotiations, you typically need a stable ceasefire or at least a pause in hostilities. But in this case, the foundation wasn't just fully in place. Tensions remain high, key flashpoints like the Strait of Hormuz are still unresolved, and actions on the ground continue to influence what is possible diplomatically. So the process may have been premature. Now, politically, both sides are also navigating their own pressures. In the US, there is a need to project strength while also avoiding a deeper, potentially costly conflict. In Iran, there is pressure to resist external demands while maintaining leverage in the region. That combination makes compromise difficult, and it also explains why, even after the talks, you hear very different narratives. Some statements emphasize willingness to continue dialogue, others highlight red lines that remain firmly in place. So, where does this leave us? For now, the failure of Islamabad talks means uncertainty. It doesn't necessarily mean diplomacy is over, but it also suggests that a quick resolution is unlikely. More back-channel efforts may follow. External players, countries with stakes in regional stability and global trade, may try to bring both sides back to the table because the stakes are not just regional. Disruptions in energy routes, especially through critical choke points, have global consequences. Economic global ripples can reach far beyond the Middle East. And that's where there's a strong incentive on all sides to prevent further escalation. But For that to happen, a few things would likely need to change: clearer communication, a more stable situation on the ground, and perhaps more importantly, a willingness to narrow the gap between competing demands. Until then, what we are seeing is not just failed set of talks, but a reminder of how complex and fragile diplomacy can be when multiple conflicts overlap. For now, Islamabad marks not a breakthrough, but a pause in much longer uncertain progress.